Okay, so in the last class, we were discussing certain programs related to social protection. Where we discussed certain programs related to social protection, and then we also discussed certain things relating to inequality. Okay, so that those were the things which we studied in the last class, in the previous class. And in this class, we'll be looking at the next chapter that is regarding planning, Indian planning, how the 5 year plans have been, how planning has been effective in India, has planning been effective in India, what has been the transition from planning commission to Niti Aayog. We'll be looking at these factors today. So you may write down the chapter's name is Indian planning. Indian planning. And you can write down economic planning. Economic planning means economic planning means a development strategy. No, economic planning means a development strategy taking into consideration limited resources, taking into consideration limited resources to achieve long-term objectives, in the economy. To achieve long-term objectives in the economy. It is different from laissez-faire. LAISSEZFAIRRE. It is different from laissez-faire, in which it is different from laissez-faire. LAISSEZFAIRRE. Laissez-faire, in which there is no external, force guiding the economic agents, to achieve some decided goals, for the benefit of all. Okay, so what has been the biggest limitation in India is India always had a limited set of resources, right? India is a country which has a very limited set of resources. If we take other countries into consideration, all the countries have this problem of scarce resources or scarcity of resources or limitation of resources. But the problem, especially with India, has been there has been a severe limitation as compared to other nations. Okay, there has been a severe limitation of resources. So, how do we distribute these resources? How do we plan to distribute these resources in the most efficient manner? That has been the point of discussion from the independence. Okay, from 1900s till 2024-25, we have been discussing about how can we plan to distribute these resources which are limited in nature or scarce in nature. Resources in availability, either country in whichever country you take, in whichever nation you analyze, it will always be scarce. Eppozhum resources limited ആണ്. ആ limited ആയ resourcesനെ ഏറ്റവും efficient ആയിട്ട് how do we utilize it? അതാണ് ഒരു countryയുടെ prosperity decide ചെയ്യുന്നത്. So in the case of India, Indian planning എന്ന് നമ്മൾ പറയുന്ന what do we plan? The 5 year plans, annual plans, all that plans have been brought into consideration to bring the fact that, or to analyze the fact that certain such limited resources have to be utilized into correct positions so that India develops at correct periods. Okay, 1947 and 1967, you can't expect a drastic change in India's GDP. But 1947 and 1987 or 2000, there is a gap of almost 50 to 60 years. ഈ ഒരു 50 to 60 years have these 5-year plans, has these 5-year plans been effectively implemented? If 5-year plans is the main objective, all the 5-year plans, you take all the annual plans, has been development. It can be focused on industrial sector, it can be focused on service sector, agriculture sector, whichever sector. But the main objective has been development. And what kind of development do we expect from 5-year plans and other annual plans in India? I've already stated this term many a times in this class. What type of development always do we expect? The development should be sustainable. Sustainable development is what we expect, right? So from the 5-year plans, from the annual plans, that's what we will be discussing in this class regarding Indian planning. What we have to understand in this chapter is the basis of this chapter, or the basics of this chapter is how these limited resources or how these scarce resources are put into effective utilization. And has this effective utilization worked out in the case of India? That is what we'll be studying. Okay. So may I write down? During 1940s, eight leading industrialists of India, formulated a plan for economic development. Do you know what that plan has been named as? 8 industrialists, they set together a plan for the economic development of India. And that plan, do you know? It is known as Bombay Plan. That plan is known as Bombay Plan. Labor union leader, M.N. Roy, presented a plan. M.N. Roy presented a plan known as the People's Plan. There was also a Gandhian plan. Presented by Gandhian thinker. Sriman Narayan. All these plans have only historical importance. All these plans have only historical importance, but they are important. As these plans started discussion in the country about the various aspects of planning, in India, and provided a base for planning in the country, after independence. In this background, planning process started in India. In this background, planning process started in India from April 1st, 1951. In this background, planning process started in India from April 1st, 1951. Okay, so these plans which we told right now, you may mark that Bombay plan, Gandhian plan, and the People's Plan by M.N. Roy. All these plans have not been so important, but in the context of Indian planning, these plans were the plans which has implemented or which started discussion regarding why shouldn't we have a plan, a plan like a 5-year plan or annual plans, so that we can implement things accordingly. These were the plans which created historical importance in providing an impetus to understanding that we need 5-year plans. Okay. So, if you ask me whether it's so important, it's not as important as 5-year plans or the annual plans that have been there till 2014. But these plans are brought into light the discussion regarding the planning commission and the 5-year plans. ഏതൊരു ഐഡിയയും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഏതൊരു ഓർഗനൈസേഷനും ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷനും എസ്റ്റാബ്ലിഷ് ആകുന്നത് is when there is an idea running behind that, right? ഒരു ഐഡിയ ഉണ്ടാകും, ആ ഐഡിയ ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്ത് ഫോർമുലേറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് it becomes an institution or an organization. So അതിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ടുള്ള ഹിസ്റ്ററിക്കൽ ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻസ് ഉള്ള ചില പ്ലാൻസ് ആയിരുന്നു this Bombay plan, People's Plan, etc. Okay. So now you may write about the Planning Commission. Planning Commission. The Planning Commission was set up. The Planning Commission was set up by a resolution of the government. The Planning Commission was set up by a resolution of the government of India. Set up by the resolution of government of India on March 15, 1950. On March 15, 1950, 1950, okay. In pursuance of declared objectives, in pursuance of declared objectives of the government, in pursuance of declared objectives of the government. Now, whatever you're going to write, you may put it in an inverted comma. To promote a rapid rise, to promote a rapid rise in the standard of living, to promote a rapid rise in the standard of living of the people, standard of living of the people by different and efficient exploitation, by different and efficient exploitation of the resources, of the country. You can write this as a next objective or as a next aim, okay? Increasing production and offering opportunities. Increasing production and offering opportunities to all for employment, in the service of the community. To all for employment in the service of the community. In the service of the community. So who was the first chairman of the Planning Commission? First chairman of the Planning Commission? Jawaharlal Nehru. You may write it down. Jawaharlal Nehru was the first chairman of the Planning Commission. Jawaharlal Nehru was the first chairman of the Planning Commission. Okay, so Jawaharlal Nehru has been the first chairman of the Planning Commission. But what you have to understand is that uh, I don't know how many of you have heard these names, but when the Indian Constitution was framed, there were several others, okay, other than B.R. Ambedkar. There were several others like B.N. Rao, Alladi Krishna Swami Iyer, and many others who were there as the constitutional advisors as well as people who helped in framing the Indian Constitution. Okay, so whenever we take the main name or whenever we take Jawaharlal Nehru as the major component of the Indian planning system, we must understand that there have been other people like M.N. Roy, which we have written as the People's Plan, the proponent of the People's Plan, M.N. Roy, and many others have been part of this planning commission. Planning commission in the sense they might not be a part of the planning commission or they might not have held a position in the planning commission, but many people are involved in the ideas and the discussion which led to this Planning Commission of India. Okay, it's not only Jawaharlal Nehru. There are many others. Like I told you, in the case of Indian Constitution, in the context of Indian Constitution, there have been many people like B.N. Rao, Alladi Krishna Swami Iyer, and many other advocates also. So it was not only about B.R. Ambedkar. So likewise, there have been many people like there have been advisors, there have been people who have been legislators, there have been people who view the judicial part of it. There have been people who foresighted that such things can happen in this country. So we should view it in such a way, like P.C. Mahalanobis, K.N. Raj, many famous economists like that. So many people were involved in this process of the Planning Commission of India or in setting up of the Planning Commission of the India. Okay. So now we'll write the organizational structure of the Planning Commission. We just write organizational structure. The Prime Minister was the chairman of the Planning Commission. The Prime Minister was the chairman of the Planning Commission, which works under the Prime Minister was the chairman of the Planning Commission, which works under the overall guidance, of the National Development Council, which works under the overall guidance of the National Development Council. Next point, the deputy chairman and the full-time members. The deputy chairman and the full-time members of the commission. The deputy chairman and the full-time members of the commission, comma, as a composite body, comma, provide advice and guidance, to the subject divisions, for the formulation of 5-year plans. Five-year plans, comma, annual plans. 5-year plans, comma, annual plans, comma, state plans, comma, monitoring plan programs. 5-year plans, annual plans, state plans, monitoring plan programs, projects and schemes. So as we have told, the 1950 resolution was instrumental in bringing up the Planning Commission of India. Now, what do you think would have been the functions, or what do you think will be the functions of the Planning Commission? Like Planning Commission engineering setup. What would be the basic reason behind setting up a Planning Commission? Development. Okay, development in the sense economic development. Okay. Other than that, what would be what would be the foresighted views of the Planning Commission? Development will automatically be there. Economic development would be there. Other than that, what all things can lead to development? Industrial development, agricultural development. Okay. And whenever we are talking about this development, okay, one thing which you have to understand is that Planning Commission also found ways in which development was retarded. Okay. We always find ways in which development has to be made. But Planning Commission had a view that such and such sector, for example, if it's an agriculture sector is the sector which is contributing less to the GDP of India, or that is the sector that is retarding the growth in sense lessening or reducing the growth of India. Okay. So Planning Commission had a view that, okay, these factors reduce the growth in India, reduce the development in India. So this retardation factor was understood by the Planning Commission. So this 1950 resolution of the Planning Commission had what in mind? Not only the development factors, but also what all factors retard the development in India. And that has been instrumental in finding out or in understanding or helping the Planning Commission to find ways ഈ സെക്ടേഴ്സ്, അതായത് ഈ ബാക്കിലോട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്ന റിട്ടാർഡ് ചെയ്ത് നിൽക്കുന്ന സെക്ടേഴ്സിനെ ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്യിക്കുമ്പോഴാണ് ദാറ്റ്സ് വെയർ ദ റിയൽ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് ഒക്കേഴ്സ്, റൈറ്റ്? ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്ത് പൊക്കോണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു സെക്ടറിനെ ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്യിക്കാൻ വലിയ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടില്ല. പക്ഷെ പുറകോട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു സെക്ടർ നോർമലി ബാക്ക്വേർഡ് പെർഫോമിംഗ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള, നോർമലി റിട്ടാർഡഡ് ആയിട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു സെക്ടറിനെ ഇഫ് യു ക്യാൻ എനേബിൾ ദാറ്റ് സെക്ടർ ടു, that is where the real development lies. So this was the main objective of the Planning Commission. So you can write it down as functions. The Planning Commission not only help the Planning Commission not only help the sectors, which were already developed, but also help the sectors which were backward performing, or underperforming to come to the forefront, which means that those sectors which were retarded or which lacked economic growth and development also were asked and was enabled by the Planning Commission to come forward. Okay, you can write this as the second function: effective and balanced utilization of country's resources. Effective and balanced utilization of country's resources. Effective and balanced utilization of country's resources. Third point can be determination of priorities. Determination of priorities. What do you mean by determination of priority in the context of Indian planning and the Planning Commission? What would it mean by determination of priority? Or priority determine cheyuka ennu parnal, what would it mean? And basic meaning endha? I'm asking it to you in the context of planning commission. You can see it from the first point which you have written itself. Certain sectors or certain areas obviously underperforming ആയിരുന്നു. ഈ അണ്ടർപെർഫോമിംഗ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള സെക്ടേഴ്സിനെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഏരിയാസിനെ ഫോർഫ്രണ്ടിലേക്ക് കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നതാണ് ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് വാട്ട് യു കോൾ priority sector lending, or that is where this prioritization of sectors occur. Okay. അപ്പൊ ഈ determination of priority എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ which sector should be focused first. ഓക്കെ, ഏത് സെക്ടറിനാണ് ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ ഫോക്കസ് കൊടുക്കേണ്ടത്, ഫൈനാൻഷ്യൽ ബാക്കിംഗ് കൊടുക്കേണ്ടത്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എക്കണോമിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ള സപ്പോർട്ട് കൊടുക്കേണ്ടത് എന്ന് കണ്ടുപിടിക്കുന്നത് വാസ് വൺ ഓഫ് ദ മേജർ ഫങ്ഷൻസ് ഓഫ് ദി പ്ലാനിംഗ് കമ്മീഷൻ. ഓക്കെ, സോ ഡിറ്റർമിനേഷൻ ഓഫ് പ്രയോറിറ്റീസ് നിങ്ങൾ എഴുതുമ്പോൾ യു കെൻ പുട്ട് എ ഹൈഫൻ ആൻഡ് റൈറ്റ് this means that certain sectors which were underperforming in nature, certain sectors which were underperforming in nature had to be brought to the forefront, or otherwise development would remain unrealistic. Okay, so that is what you mean by determination of priorities. ഏത് സെക്ടറിന് ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻസ് കൊടുക്കണം, ഏത് സെക്ടർ അതിപ്പം റിട്ടാർഡ് ചെയ്ത് നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു സെക്ടർ ആകാം, which sector can bring maximum growth and development to India. Okay, that was the thing of primary importance. ഒരു സെക്ടർ ബാക്ക്വേർഡ് ആണ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അണ്ടർ പെർഫോമിംഗ് ആണെങ്കിൽ why can't we bring it to the forefront so that there would be overall development. അല്ല ഇപ്പം ഞാൻ I have already told you this thing, ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഡെവലപ്ഡ് ആയിട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു സാധനത്തിനെ ഫർദർ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റിലേക്ക് കൊണ്ടുപോകാൻ ഇറ്റ്സ് നോട്ട് എ ബിഗ് ടാസ്ക്. പക്ഷെ അണ്ടർ പെർഫോമിംഗ് ആയിട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു ഇതിനെ ഡെവലപ്പ് സ്റ്റേജിലേക്ക് കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നത് ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് ദി റിയൽ ചാലഞ്ച്, and that was the challenge took up by the planning commission also. Okay, next you can write the evolving functions. From a highly centralized planning system, the Indian economy is gradually moving towards indicative planning, where planning commission concerns itself gradually moving towards indicative planning, where planning commission concerns itself with the building of a long-term strategic vision of the future, and decide on priorities of the nation. It works out sectoral targets. and provides promotional stimulus and provides promotional stimulus to the economy, promotional stimulus to the economy to grow in the desired direction. The desired direction. Planning Commission plays an integrative role. Planning Commission plays an integrative role in the development of a holistic approach to the policy formulation in critical areas of human and economic development. The critical areas of human and economic development. In the social sector, schemes which require coordination and synthesis. Schemes which require coordination and synthesis, like rural health, drinking water, literacy, environment, have yet to be subjected to coordinated policy formulation. Have yet to be subjected to coordinated policy formulation. It has led to multiplicity of agencies. It has led to multiplicity of agencies. An integrated approach can lead to better results at much lower cost. An integrated approach can lead to better results at a much lower cost or at much lower cost. Okay, so these have been the evolving functions of the Planning Commission. It's similar to what we have discussed as the main functions of the Planning Commission also. You can either write it as a function, a major function of the Planning Commission, or as an evolving function. The basic factor in that is that Planning Commission has always taken a holistic approach. Okay, a holistic approach, it has considered all the sectors. It has considered all the sectors for development, not only one sector. That, as I've already told you, those sectors which retard or are underperforming, those sectors which are developing, those sectors which are already developed and are doing all good, all these sectors will be considered equally. Equally in the sense, sometimes an unbalanced growth strategy is taken into consideration. Now, what do you mean by an unbalanced growth strategy? All sectors are not given equal resources and financial backing, right? Certain resources which are underperforming, they will be helped more. അതായത് underperforming ആയിട്ടുള്ള കുറെ സെക്ടേഴ്സും ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീസും കാണും. ഈ underperforming ആയിട്ടുള്ള സെക്ടേഴ്സിനും ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീസിനും they will be given much more finance and economic backing. Okay, they will be given much more finance and economic backing. So അതിനാണ് unbalanced growth എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. When do we have a balanced growth? A balanced growth is when all the sectors are given the same economic and financial backing. Okay. So India has always taken an unbalanced growth strategy, and that has been clear in the evolving functions of the Planning Commission. So you can write it down. The key to efficient utilization of resources. The key to efficient utilization of resources lies in the creation of appropriate self-managed organizations, at all levels. Self-managed organizations at all levels. In this area, Planning Commission attempts to play a systems change role. Planning Commission attempts to play a systems change role and provide consultancy. Systems change role and provide consultancy with the government for developing better systems. In order to spread the gains of experience, gains of experience more widely, Planning Commission, after more widely put a comma, okay, more widely, comma, Planning Commission also plays an information dissemination role. Planning Commission also plays an information dissemination role. What do you mean by information dissemination? Yeah, exactly. The word dissemination means spreading. Okay. So it is about information spreading and helping the other agencies, the local institutions also will be given certain ideas regarding how to develop. Okay. So that is the basic idea of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission always had one thing in mind. It's not only about what a Planning Commission as an organization or as an institution is going to do, but it is also regarding how other local institutions also come into play. Okay. Local institutions in the benefit as they are local in nature, they will be able to understand and analyze the local issues first. Local issues much more easily. If a local government or local self-government, for example, if it's in the case of Trivandrum, the basic sanitation issues, whatever be the kind of issues that are there, it can be easily understood, right? That it can be easily understood and they will have a lot of solutions for that. Planning Commission as an organization which is set up in the center or as a part of the central government might not have an idea regarding each and every single aspect that is happening there in Trivandrum district as well as in the other districts. ഒരു general overview ആണെന്നുള്ളതല്ലാതെ ഒരു local self-help government ഇവിടെ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു local agency is there to support the Planning Commission, it would be easier for them to conduct the task of this planning. ഏത് തരത്തിൽ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് കൊണ്ടുവരാം, ഏത് തരത്തിൽ ബേസിക് അമ്യൂണിറ്റീസ് ആൾക്കാർക്ക് പ്രൊവൈഡ് ചെയ്യാം, എത്ര ബേസിക് അമ്യൂണിറ്റീസ് പ്രൊവൈഡ് ചെയ്യണം, ഇൻ വാട്ട് ക്വാണ്ടിറ്റി ആൻഡ് ഇൻ വാട്ട് ക്വാളിറ്റി. All these factors can be analyzed by the planning commission if they have the support of some local agencies or some local governments, etc. Okay, like gram sabha adupoലുള്ള sabhas ഒക്കെ ഉണ്ട്. So that is the reason behind the planning commission being an information dissemination center. അവരുടെ കയ്യിലുള്ള information അവരെ spread ചെയ്ത് കൊടുക്കുകയാണ് to other agencies or to other governments, local governments, so that there is an active involvement in all the areas of this country. There is an active participation by the people in all the areas of the country. There is an equal understanding and an overall understanding regarding what has been the problems in India. ഇന്ത്യയിലെ പ്രോബ്ലംസ് എന്താണ്? ബീഹാറിലെ പ്രോബ്ലം അല്ല കേരളത്തിലെ പ്രോബ്ലം. കേരളത്തിലെ പ്രോബ്ലം തന്നെ ആയിരിക്കില്ല ട്രിവാൻഡ്രത്ത് ഒരു ഒരു സ്മോൾ ഡിസ്ട്രിക്റ്റിലുള്ള പ്രോബ്ലം. So all these micro perspectives can be understood with the help of local governments, right? ഈ micro ആയിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ, ഈ whenever you hear the word planning commission, take it as a macro term. Okay, it is for India. It is not for Kerala or for Trivandrum or for Kottayam district alone. It is for India. ഈ പ്ലാനിംഗ് കമ്മീഷൻ എന്നുള്ളത് ഒരു മാക്രോ ടേമും അതിന്റെ കീഴിൽ വരുന്ന അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അവർ ഇൻഫർമേഷൻ ഡിസമിനേറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് കൊടുക്കുന്ന സ്പ്രെഡ് ചെയ്ത് കൊടുക്കുന്ന ഏജൻസീസ് ആർ ദോസ് മൈക്രോ ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷൻസ് which analyze each and every small aspect of every region, and they provide this to such the planning commission in writing or such that certain areas have these many issues, these are to be solved in these areas. If such and such problems are solved, we'll have a development in this area. Okay, so this is the way each and every area in a country develops. It's not due to the fact that an organization will be aware of, they must be aware, but still it is very tough to be aware of all the conditions of all the areas in a very big country like India, where the population rate is very high. So with the help of this local organization, with the help of these local institutions, it is very easy to understand and comprehend and find solutions and suggestions to help this country as a whole, to bring this country into a holistic development. And that is the reason why there are several local or small institutions at different areas of the country. Okay, so I hope it's clear for you. Next, we'll write about the National Development Council, NDC. National Development Council. NDC came into being. NDC came into being on August 6th, 1952. NDC came into being on August 6th, 1952. Since the very beginning, there was felt a need for the creation of a body. There was felt a need for the creation of a body consisting of the representatives of the central government, comma, the constituent units of a federal union, and others equally interested and qualified for the job. In fact, the draft outline of the very first 5-year plan, had expressed the need for such a body. had expressed the need for such a body. This proposal, this proposal was accepted by the government. This proposal was accepted by the government of India, government of India, and thus the NDC was created. Government of India, and thus the NDC was created. The main intent behind setting up this body, the main intent behind setting up this body was to strengthen and mobilize the efforts was to strengthen and mobilize the efforts and resources of the nation in support of the 5-year plans. For 5-year plans, write F5P. In support of the 5-year plans to promote common economic policies, in all vital spheres, common economic policies in all vital spheres, and to ensure the balanced and rapid development of all parts of the country. Okay. So for what purpose was the National Development Council set up? What was the main purpose why this National Development Council was set up? What did you write as the main intent? To strengthen? Yeah, exactly. That is to strengthen and mobilize the efforts and the resources of the nation, right? So this is what we have told in the 5-year plans also. That it's also the same thing. One of the major functions is the same thing. Once you study the 5-year plans, it's easy for you to comprehend and understand and analyze the National Development Council also. Okay. Almost the functions are equally same. The objectives also go in line with the 5-year plans. The basic understanding is this: we have a limited set of resources. How are these resources allocated to different parts of the country equally? Which should provide a balanced development to all the sectors of the country or to all the industries of the country. Okay. No sector or no industry should go behind. In case some industry or sector is underperforming, we should make some ways to promote the development of that particular sector or industry which is lagging behind. Okay. This is the basic concept of National Development Council as well as the planning in India. Okay. So the composition of NDC. We just write down in points. Okay. Don't have to write it in lines. Just write down in points. Composition: first, Prime Minister. All the Union Cabinet Ministers. Prime Minister, all the Union Cabinet Ministers. Prime Minister, all the Union Cabinet Ministers. Chief Ministers of all the states. Chief Ministers of all the states or their substitutes. Chief Ministers of all the states or their substitutes. Substitutes in the reason if they are giving an in charge person. And representatives of the Union Territories. Representatives of the Union Territories and members of the Commission. Representatives of the Union Territories and members of the Commission. And there have been, you write now this in line. Write down this in a line. There have been occasions. There have been occasions when the Reserve Bank governor. There have been occasions where the Reserve Bank governor and other experts, Reserve Bank governor and other experts have been invited, and other experts have been invited to address the meetings. To address the meetings. Write down the primary objectives. Primary objectives or main objectives or simply objectives. First is what we have already written, to strengthen and mobilize. To strengthen and mobilize the effort. To strengthen and mobilize the effort and resources. To strengthen and mobilize the effort and resources of the nation. Of the nation. Second point, to promote economic policies. To promote economic policies in all vital spheres. To promote economic policies in all vital spheres. The third objective, to ensure the balanced and rapid development. All these objectives is something which we have already written. To ensure the balanced and rapid development of all parts of the country. Major functions. Major functions. To review the working of the national plan. Major functions. To review the working of the national plan from time to time. To review the working of the national plan from time to time. To consider important questions. To consider important questions of social and economic policy. To consider important questions of social and economic policy affecting national development. Affecting national development. To recommend measures for the achievement of the aims and targets set out in the national plan. Aims and targets set out in the national plan. Now you just go through what we have written till now, from the beginning of the planning commission chapter, that Indian planning chapter, to what we have written till now. So when was this National Development Council set up? August 6th. And when was the Planning Commission resolution put into place? Which year was it? 1950. So what you have to understand is that if you study the basic functions for the planning commission or the Indian planning or the economic planning that has been there in India, if you can study that, then you will be able to analyze the functions of the National Development Council as well. Okay. Whatever we have written under this National Development Council, you please look. All these things is something which we have discussed earlier during the time when we discussed that Indian plan. It's about setting up and distributing the or managing the resources really well. So all these points have been discussed earlier itself. So once you study these points, these are the basic points which you can write for planning and for National Development Council and even for the 5-year plans. Okay. So these are common points and these are common functions and common objectives. All you have to do is once you get these points into heart, these basic functions and these basic objectives into place. The only difference is there in the composition or the organizational structure of National Development Council and the Planning Commission. Other than that, all other things, the objectives and the functions are really common in between them. So once you study one thing, the same thing can be written for the other thing also. That is, once you study the Planning Commission, you will be able to write it for the National Development Council also. The dates as well, the launching dates as well as the composition or the organizational structure is the only thing differentiating them. Okay. So now you can write down as a continuation of the National Development Council. In October 1967, on the recommendation of the First Administrative Reforms Commission, on the recommendation of the First Administrative Reforms Commission, comma, the council was reconstituted. The council was reconstituted and its functions were redefined. Council was reconstituted and its functions were redefined to include first point, to include prescription of guidelines for the formulation of the national plan, prescription of guidelines for the formulation of national plan, including the assessment of resources for the plan. Including the assessment of resources for the plan. Consideration of national plan, second point, okay? Consideration of national plan. Consideration of national plan as formulated by the commission. Consideration of national plan as formulated by the commission. Third point, considering important questions of social, and economic policy, affecting national development. It was envisaged that ENBI SAG It's not the next point, okay? As a continuation, you can write it, but it's not the next point. It was envisaged that the NDC, it was envisaged that the NDC would advise and make would advise and make its recommendations would advise and make its recommendations to the central make its recommendations to the central and state governments put a full stop and write since its inception it has been functioning since its inception it has been functioning as a high power consultative body where the frame of the 5-year plans comma the important problems facing the Indian economy and the policies that have to be adopted for tiding over the urgent problems okay for tiding over the urgent problems. So this redefining of the recommendations or after that recommendations made, there has been a redefining of functions, but there hasn't been much of a difference from the functions they have been performing. Okay, the functions are almost the same. The thing is that they have phrased it in different way. It is regarding the consideration of the national plan. It is the consideration. It's about reconsidering everything that they already had. Okay, it doesn't make much of a difference. So what you have to keep in mind while studying Indian planning as well as the planning commission is that the basic functions and objectives remain the same. Okay, and that basic functions include mobilizing and distributing resources equally and such functions. And the objectives are also the same. It is also to create a balanced development, a rapid development that in all the sectors. So the functions and the objectives remain the same. When there has been a recommendation made, there has been a redefining of the suggestions. But even these redefined suggestions or the solutions still are in par or are at par with what have been the earlier functions. നേരത്തെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്ന functions എന്താണോ that is the of prime importance. അത് തന്നെയാണ് prime importance ഉള്ളത്. ഈ redefined ആയിട്ട് വന്ന functions doesn't make much of a difference to the earlier functions which we have already learned. Okay. So now you can write down the objectives of economic planning in India. Objectives of economic planning in India. First objective, to increase production to the maximum possible extent so as to achieve higher level of national and per capita income. so as to achieve higher level of national and per capita income. Second objective can be to achieve full employment. To achieve full employment. To reduce inequalities, third point, okay? To reduce inequalities of income and wealth. To reduce inequalities of income and wealth. To set up a socialistic society. To set up a socialistic society based on equality and justice. Based on equality and justice. Based on equality and justice and absence of exploitation. And absence of exploitation. So in any country you take, these would be the objectives of economic planning, okay? Not only in the case of India, in any country you take, they would want to maximize their production. They would love to maximize profit. They would love to have a higher level of GDP or a higher level of income, national per capita income, full employment. All these things are some certain things which we have already discussed. And these remain as the objectives of India as well, okay? The objectives of India can be put as the objectives of the economic planning of India, okay? Whatever we plan, if that is implemented, that is where the planning comes into action, right? Plan and planning, so the plan is something which you have set, and when you put it into practice or when you implement it, it becomes a planning. Okay, that's why it is known as plans are nothing, but planning is everything. So that is where the planning has to come into effect. For example, we already learned a lot of schemes, right? Social protection programs, poverty alleviation, employment generation, etc., etc. We learned a lot of schemes. All these are plans to reduce poverty or either to create employment, etc. What we discussed was that how good is the implementation of that plans, right? That was one major question. Are these plans effective? How good is the implementation of these plans? If these plans are very well implemented, if these plans are very well executed, it means that the planning has been going well, right? The other thing, the basic framework is the plan, and how we execute it is known as the planning of that. And planning is the major component of how a plan works. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഒരു പ്ലാൻ ഉണ്ട്, പക്ഷെ ആ പ്ലാൻ യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നില്ല എന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഇറ്റ്സ് ഇൻഎഫക്റ്റീവ്. ഒരു പ്ലാൻ ഉണ്ട്, അത് പ്രോപ്പറായിട്ട് ഇംപ്ലിമെന്റ് ചെയ്യുകയാണ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പ്രോപ്പറായിട്ട് എക്സിക്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്യുകയാണെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് വേർ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് കംസ് ഔട്ട്, റൈറ്റ്? അതൊരു ഇൻഡിവിജ്വലിന്റെ കേസിലാണെങ്കിലും ഒരു ഇക്കോണമിയുടെ കേസിലാണെങ്കിലും ഒരു കൺട്രിയുടെ കേസിലാണെങ്കിലും ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് വേർ ദി റിയൽ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് ലൈസ്. So if we analyze the objectives of economic planning in India, we have to understand that these objectives are also the objectives of India as such. ഈ പ്രൊഡക്ഷൻ ഇൻക്രീസ് ചെയ്യുന്നതും പെർ ക്യാപിറ്റ ഇൻകം ഇൻക്രീസ് ചെയ്യുന്നതും ഫുൾ എംപ്ലോയ്മെന്റിലേക്ക് കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നതും അണ്ടർ എംപ്ലോയ്മെന്റ് കുറയ്ക്കുന്നതും, ഓൾ ദീസ് ആർ ദി ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ്സ് ഓഫ് ഇന്ത്യ ആസ് സച്ച്. ഇന്ത്യ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഏതൊരു കൺട്രി ഫോർ ദാറ്റ് റീസൺ, ആ ഒരു കൺട്രിയുടെ ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ്സ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് വിൽ ബി ഓൾ ദി സെയിം. ഓക്കെ, സോ കീപ്പിംഗ് ദാറ്റ് ഇൻ മൈൻഡ്, you can write down the important features of Indian planning. Important features of Indian planning. There are basically 5 important features, okay? And the first one is indicative planning. Indicative planning. What do you mean by indicative planning? What do you mean by indicative planning? Or do you know what imperative planning is? Okay, so you write it down and I'll explain it to you. Okay, Indian planning is not imperative. Indian planning is not imperative. IMPERATIV. Indian planning is not imperative but indicative. Imperative alla indicative aanu, but indicative in nature. It means that there is no element of compulsion. It means that there is no element of compulsion in planning. There is no element of compulsion in planning, as in the case of socialistic countries, as in the case of socialistic countries. It is because of the mixed nature. It is because of the mixed nature of Indian economy. It is because of the mixed nature of the Indian economy. The government lays down detailed targets. The government lays down detailed targets to be achieved during the planning period. To be achieved during the planning period. There may be some element of compulsion. There may be some element of compulsion for the public sector. But there is an element. Of expectation from the private sector. But there is an element of expectation from the private sector. Thus, Indian planning is indicative. Or planning by inducement. Indicative or planning by inducement. Planning by inducement, okay? So that is the thing regarding indicative planning. There is no compulsion as to such and such sector should perform or to get the target, okay? For a private company, obviously, if you work, you will have certain targets to be fulfilled. But in the case of indicative planning, and that is one major strategy of Indian planning, there is no compulsion as such to which public sector should acquire, like private sector should acquire. But the thing is that there is some compulsion regarding that the public sector should do certain development for the people. That is expected from them, okay? Or a minimum level of development public sector is expected from them. That's a compulsion. That is something which they have to do. Okay? That's a compulsion. That's a compulsory action. Or government or central government, it is their duty to perform that. They do something, at least provide basic amenities to the people of the nation. Okay, their nation. That's a compulsion planning, but it is indicative. Planning by inducement, it comes out of action. Okay. But private sector, whenever you hear the word private sector, private firms, private companies, etc., the first word is profit. They are profit oriented. They don't work for welfare of the people. There might be some private companies working for the welfare of the people also. But a first target will always be profit. They are always profit driven or profit motivated, unlike the public sectors. Okay. So, what is expected from the private sector? Profit. And what is expected from the public sector is overall development. Okay. These are certain things which are expected from them. There is no certain compulsion that public sector must do something. There is no compulsion that private sector must get this and this quantity of profit or this and this rate of profit. Okay. That is why it is known as a planning by inducement. It is expected that they will do these works. they will do these works, they'll perform this development or they'll perform this planning. Okay. That is what is known as indicative planning. There is nothing called as compulsion in this, but it is expected from public sector as well as private sector to do what they actually do. Okay. Public sector ആണെങ്കിൽ development കൊണ്ടുവരാ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ overall development കൊണ്ടുവരാ. Private sector ആണെങ്കിൽ it is about profit. It is about bringing in much more profit, right? So that's the thing. Next planning is physical planning. Physical planning. First one was indicative. Second one is physical. Economic planning. Economic planning maybe physical planning. Economic planning maybe physical planning or financial planning. Economic planning maybe physical planning or financial planning. Indian planning is physical in nature. Indian planning is physical in nature. This is based on the assumption. This is based on the assumption. This is based on the assumption that what is physically possible, what is physically possible or whatever is physically possible may not be financially possible too. What is physically possible may not be financially possible too. But practically, both are complementary. And go side by side. Both are complementary and go side by side. Okay. So that's the thing regarding Indian planning. If you ask me whether Indian planning is absolutely physical planning in nature, it is physical planning, but as the last line which we have wrote states, but practically both are complementary and side by side in nature, right? Physical planning doesn't always go alone. It has to have certain kind of financial planning also to implement this physical planning. Okay. Physical planning, it is to implement much more of physical infrastructure, getting in much more physical assets to the nation. It is about that is what is known as physical planning. For financial planning, the physical planning it is nearly impossible. So basically, if there is physical planning, automatically there is financial planning also. Physical planning beautiful rate financial planning, but still both these things go side by side. Are complementary in nature. Complementary in nature, what do you mean by complementing each other? What do you mean by complementing each other in general English? Compliment it's about complimenting him, right? Complimenting him support encourage motivation compliment. So complimenting each other, it means you are going side by side. Concept. Likewise, physical planning, slight financial planning, physical planning won't go hand in hand with what we call as financial planning. So Indian planning, physical planning, the focus is, but still financial planning. Okay, that is the real concept behind that. Next is decentralized planning. Decentralized planning. Indian planning is decentralized in the sense. Indian planning is decentralized in the sense that NDC, what is NDC? In the sense that NDC is represented by states. NDC is represented by state governments. Is represented by state governments and union territories also. It's represented by state governments and union territories also. There is planning at the states. That's planning at the state level as well. There is planning at the state level as well. There is constitutional provision. There is constitutional provision for district level planning. There is constitutional provision for district level planning. All these facts make the Indian planning. All these facts make the Indian planning decentralized in nature. All these facts make the Indian planning decentralized in nature. Okay, so what do you mean by decentralized planning? You might have heard that in politics, economics, many. That's a very common term, right? Decentralized planning. What do you mean by centralized planning? Centralized planning focusing on the central, like center plan centralized planning. So what will automatically be decentralized planning? Decentralized central powers divide power dissemination. Information dissemination it's the dissemination of powers from the center to state, local governments like Gram Sabha. Small governments like power disseminate in what do you call? Decentralized planning. Okay, that is the basic concept. ഓരോ സ്മോൾ ഏരിയയിലെയും പ്രശ്നങ്ങളും പ്രോബ്ലംസും കൺസേൺസും എല്ലാം അഡ്രസ് ചെയ്യാൻ ചിലപ്പോൾ പ്ലാനിംഗ് കമ്മീഷന് പറ്റില്ല. They might not be aware of that also. So to keep awareness regarding that, they require the help of these small organization or these local institutions അല്ലെങ്കിൽ local organizations. അപ്പൊ അതിനു വേണ്ടിയിട്ടാണ് India has brought in this concept of decentralized planning for that itself. Okay, so that being the third type of planning, you can write the fourth type of planning, that is social planning. Social planning. Indian planning is not typically economic planning prevalent in most of the developed countries. Prevalent in most of the developed countries due to various social objectives. To be achieved. Due to various social objectives to be achieved through the planning process. Indian planning is economic planning as well as social planning. Indian planning is economic planning, economic as well as social planning. Economic planning as well as social planning. Indian planning is economic planning as well as social planning. So what do you mean by economic planning as well as social planning? Economic planning, now you might know. What do you mean by social planning? So very easy concept. What do you mean by social planning? Social planning social factors are India. Factors develop at the same time economy develop, right? നമ്മൾ സോഷ്യൽ ഇൻഇക്വാളിറ്റി, ഇൻകം ഇക്കണോമിക് ഇൻഇക്വാളിറ്റി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് പോലെ തന്നെയാണ് ദർ ഇസ് സംതിങ് നോൺ ആസ് സോഷ്യൽ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് ആസ് വെൽ ആസ് എക്കണോമിക് ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ്. എക്കണോമിക് ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ ഇറ്റ് വിൽ മോസ്റ്റ്ലി ബി ഇൻ ടേംസ് ഓഫ് മണി, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇൻകം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ കൺസംഷൻ പാറ്റേൺ, ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഫാക്ടേഴ്സിനെ ഡിപ്പെൻഡ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ സോഷ്യൽ എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും ഇറ്റ് ഡിപ്പെൻഡ്സ് അപ്പോൺ ദി സൊസൈറ്റി, റൈറ്റ്? സൊസൈറ്റി, പോവർട്ടി, അൺഎംപ്ലോയ്മെന്റ് റേറ്റ്സ്, ഇതുപോലുള്ള ഫാക്ടേഴ്സിനെ ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്യുക അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇംപ്രൂവ് ചെയ്യുക, ഇതിനാണ് സോഷ്യൽ പ്ലാനിംഗ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ഈ സോഷ്യൽ പ്ലാനിംഗ് when it is coupled with economic planning, what do we get? That is the overall planning, right? അവിടെയാണ് ഹോളിസ്റ്റിക് ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സാധനം വരുന്നത്. ഒറ്റ ഒരു കാര്യത്തിൽ ഫോക്കസ് ചെയ്ത് ഒരു പ്ലാനിങ്ങിലായിട്ട് പോയി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ there is no holistic development. What we require from India is that all people should develop, right? All areas, all people, everything should develop. ഈ ഹോളിസ്റ്റിക് ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് കൊണ്ടുവരണം എന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ what do we need? We need economic planning, social planning, അതുപോലുള്ള budgetary allocation of resources. All these things must come into place, must go hand in hand, so that the whole of the country is developed. Okay? Holistic development എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ അതാ, മൊത്തത്തിലുള്ള ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് or overall development. ആ overall development, what do we need? We need social planning as well as economic planning. Okay? And the last one can be emphasis on basic and infrastructure sector. Emphasis on basic and infrastructure sector. Emphasis on basic and infrastructure sector. Indian plans, comma, especially before 1980, emphasized on the development of basic industries, with a view to provide foundation for faster economic development. That is the basic thing, okay? Infrastructure sector അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു basic industry, basic ആയിട്ട് വേണ്ട ഒരു കൺട്രിയിൽ വേണ്ട ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീസിന്റെ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ്. That is something which every country want, right? Not only India, but US ആയിക്കോട്ടെ, ജർമ്മനി ആയിക്കോട്ടെ, ജപ്പാൻ ആയിക്കോട്ടെ, for that reason you take any country, it requires what? It requires an emphasis on basic and infrastructure sector, industrial sector, agriculture sector. Many countries might not have this thing called agriculture sector, but definitely all the countries in right now, contemporary world, industrial sector and service sector ഉണ്ട്. Okay, in all the countries we take, service sector വളരെ dominant ആയിട്ട് വരുവാണ്. Industrial sector is also there. China, for that reason, is a country which relies highly on the industrial sector. Industries ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതലുള്ള sector China. Do you know which is the country which produces the largest amount of emission in this world? It is China. ഏറ്റവും ഡെവലപ്ഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള നേഷൻസ് ആണ് ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ എമിഷൻസ് പ്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ആൻഡ് ദേ ആർ ദ വൺസ് ഹു കോൾ ഫോർ പാരീസ് അഗ്രിമെന്റ് ആൻഡ് അതർ ക്ലൈമറ്റ് അക്കോർഡ്സ് ഓൾസോ. സോ ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് ദ ബേസിക് കോൺട്രാസ്റ്റ് ബിറ്റ്വീൻ ദീസ് തിങ്സ്. ഓക്കെ, ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ കാർബൺ എമിഷൻസ് എമിറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്ന കൺട്രീസ് ആയിരിക്കും ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ ക്ലൈമറ്റ് റെസിലിയന്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള പ്രോഡക്ട്സ് വേണം എന്ന് ആവശ്യപ്പെടുന്നത്. ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് ദ കോൺട്രഡിക്ഷൻ ദാറ്റ്. സോ വി ഹാവ് മൂവ്ഡ് ഔട്ട് ഓഫ് ദ ടോപ്പിക്. സോ വാട്ട് വി ഹാവ് ടോൾഡ് ഹിയർ ഇസ് ദാറ്റ് ബേസിക് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ബേസിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ള സെക്ടർ, ബേസിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീസ്, ഇൻഫ്രാസ്ട്രക്ചർ സെക്ടർ, ഇതിന്റെയൊക്കെ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് must go hand in hand with the development of the country. Okay, and we'll start with the first 5-year plan. Okay, you write the heading as 5-year plans in India. 5-year plans in India. And the first 5-year plan. Subheading at the first 5-year plan. So ഒരു കോമൺ രീതിയിൽ എഴുതി പോയാൽ മതി. ഫസ്റ്റ് പോയിന്റ് ക്യാൻ ബി പീരിയഡ്. ഓക്കെ, പീരിയഡ് ഏത് പീരിയഡിലാണ് ഈ 5-year പ്ലാൻ ഉള്ളത്? ഫസ്റ്റ് പോയിന്റ് ക്യാൻ ബി പീരിയഡ്. 1st April 1951 to 1st April 1951 to 31 March 1956. 1st April 1951 to 31 March 1956. If not the date, exact date, please remember the year, okay? 1951 to 1956. Second point, and model. 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 Harad Domar model. HARRAD. HARRAD. DOMAR. Harad Domar model. Third point is main objective. Development of agriculture sector. Development of agriculture sector. Other objectives. Rehabilitation of migrants from Pakistan. Rehabilitation of migrants from Pakistan. Second point, to reconstruct the economy. To reconstruct the economy which was damaged. To reconstruct the economy which was damaged due to Second World War. To solve the food crisis. To solve the food crisis. To check inflation. To check inflation. Revival of small and cottage industries. Revival of small and cottage industries. To prepare sound base. To prepare sound base for faster economic development of the economy. To prepare a sound base for faster economic development of the economy. Main features. Next, write down main features. In 1952, Community Development Program. Community Development Program was introduced. Was introduced. Second point, achievements in agriculture. Achievements in agriculture, comma irrigation. Achievements in agriculture, comma irrigation, and community development works. Agriculture, irrigation, and community development works. Third point, growth rate of national income. Growth rate of national income during the plan was 3.6%. During the plan was 3.6%, which was more than the targeted growth rate, which was more than the targeted growth rate of 2.1%. Growth rate of per capita income. Next point. Growth rate of per capita income was 1.8%. Growth rate of per capita income was 1.8%. Okay, so these are the main features of the first 5 year plan. We'll discuss the first 5 year plan after the break, okay? And we'll write down the other 5 year plans after the. Okay, so we'll start. So we have written certain things regarding the first 5-year plan, right? So make sure that even if you don't remember the exact date as such, but you must remember the years, okay? The 1951 to 1956, that period must be there in your mind. So that is what you have to keep in mind also. So the first 5-year plan was from 1951 to 56. It followed the Harad-Domar model. That's a model as such. And the main objective of this plan, what was the main objective of this plan? It was development of the agriculture sector, or focusing on agriculture sector was the main aim of the first 5-year plan. Okay. When we come to the second 5-year plan, we find a shift from that agriculture sector to the secondary sector. I mean, to the secondary sector, that is to the industrial sector. So the main objective of this plan has been to focus or to increase the food production. Okay. One of the major objectives or the sub objectives, you can say, the main objective has been focusing on the agriculture sector, or dominance on the agriculture sector, giving dominance to the agriculture sector. When we tell that we are giving dominance or importance to the agriculture sector, one sub objective of that is increasing the food production or food supply. Okay. Food production and food supply കൂട്ടുക എന്നുള്ളത് ഇന്ത്യനെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് ആ സമയത്ത് ഭയങ്കര ഒരു ഇഷ്യൂ ആയിരുന്നു, ഒരു കൺസേൺ ആയിരുന്നു. റീസൺ ബീങ് ഇന്ത്യയിൽ ഫുഡ് ക്രൈസിസ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ഓക്കെ, ഫുഡ് ക്രൈസിസ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, ഫെമൈൻസ് എഫക്ട് ചെയ്തിരുന്നു. ഈ റീസൺസ് ഒക്കെ കൊണ്ട് ഫുഡ് വേണം എന്നുള്ളത്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ബേസിക് ഹങ്കർ ഇഷ്യൂസ് സോൾവ് ചെയ്യുക എന്നുള്ളത് ഇന്ത്യയുടെ ഫസ്റ്റ് 5-year പ്ലാന്റെ ഒരു സബ് ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ് ആയിട്ട് വരുന്ന ഒരു കാര്യമാണ്, വിച്ച് യു ഹാവ് ഓൾറെഡി റിട്ടൺ. ഐ ജസ്റ്റ് ടോൾഡ് യു. പിന്നെ ഇൻഫ്ലേഷണറി ടെൻഡൻസീസ് കുറയ്ക്കുക എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്, inflation is something that is there in almost all the economies, right? Inflation, deflation, that all these economic cycles and economic trends are commonly followed in all the countries. Okay, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എല്ലാ കൺട്രീസിലും ഉള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് ഇൻഫ്ലേഷൻ ആൻഡ് ഡിഫ്ലേഷൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ബട്ട് the reason or the fact is to control that. Okay, the reason where India has to focus, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ the fact where India has to focus, the area in which India has to focus is in controlling the inflation, right? ഇൻഫ്ലേഷൻ ഏത് പോയിന്റിൽ കൺട്രോൾ ചെയ്യുന്നു, ഡിഫ്ലേഷൻ ഏത് പോയിന്റിൽ കൺട്രോൾ ചെയ്യുന്നു. ഈ രണ്ട് സാധനങ്ങളും ഏതൊരു എക്കണോമിയുടെ കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റിൽ എടുത്താലും ഒരു സ്ലൈറ്റ് പോയിന്റ് വരെ കാണും. ഈ സ്ലൈറ്റ് പോയിന്റ് വരെ കാണുന്നതിലല്ല, ബട്ട് ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് ഇൻ കൺട്രോളിങ്, അതൊരു ഹയർ ലെവലിലേക്ക് പോകാതിരിക്കുന്നതിനാണ്. ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് വൺ ഓഫ് ദി മേജർ ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ്സ്. പിന്നെ റീകൺസ്ട്രക്ഷൻ ആഫ്റ്റർ ദി സെക്കൻഡ് വേൾഡ് വാർ റിമെയിൻസ് ആസ് എൻ ഇമ്പോർട്ടന്റ് പോയിന്റ്. കാരണം സെക്കൻഡ് വേൾഡ് വാറിന്റെ ഒരു 1945 വരെയുള്ള പീരീഡ് കഴിഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, ഒരു 1939 to 45 വരെയുള്ള പീരീഡ് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, it has been reconstruction for almost all the countries in this world. Okay, let it be the Axis powers, the Allied powers, and for India and the other countries who have joined NAM for that reason. NAM means non-aligned movement. Okay, അതിൽ ജോയിൻ ചെയ്ത ഈ രണ്ട് ബ്ലോക്സിലും ഇൻവോൾവ് അല്ലാത്ത കൺട്രീസിന് പോലും റീകൺസ്ട്രക്ഷന്റെ ആവശ്യം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. And why was there a need for reconstruction? Because these countries were going backwards due to the fact that the developed nations were affected by the Second World War. Okay, millions of lives were lost. First World War കഴിഞ്ഞു, അത് കഴിഞ്ഞ് റീകൺസ്ട്രക്ട് ചെയ്ത് ഡെവലപ്ഡ് ആയിട്ട് വരുന്ന സമയത്താണ് സെക്കൻഡ് വേൾഡ് വാർ വരുന്നത്. സെക്കൻഡ് വേൾഡ് വാർ വരുമ്പോൾ ഓട്ടോമാറ്റിക്കലി അഗെയിൻ മില്യൺസ് ഓഫ് ലൈഫ്സ് ആർ ലോസ്റ്റ്, പ്ലാന്റ്, മെഷീനറി, ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീസ് ഇതെല്ലാം നശിക്കും. സോ ഓട്ടോമാറ്റിക്കലി അഗെയിൻ ദർ ഇസ് എ ലോസ് ഓഫ് ലൈഫ്സ് ആൻഡ് ദർ ഇസ് എ നീഡ് ഫോർ റീകൺസ്ട്രക്ഷൻ. അതാണ് ഫസ്റ്റ് 5-year പ്ലാന്റെ ഏറ്റവും ഇമ്പോർട്ടന്റ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു പ്രൈം ആയിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്ന ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ്. ഈ പറയുന്ന ഇൻഫ്ലേഷണറി ടെൻഡൻസി കുറയ്ക്കണമെങ്കിലും ദ സോ കോൾഡ് അഗ്രികൾച്ചർ സെക്ടറിന് ഡോമിനൻസ് കൊടുക്കണം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അഗ്രികൾച്ചറൽ സെക്ടറിൽ ഫോക്കസ് ചെയ്യണം എന്നൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ പറയുമ്പോഴും ഈ റീകൺസ്ട്രക്ഷൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഇസ് ഇൻ ഡൂയിങ് ദീസ് തിങ്സ്. ഓക്കെ, റീകൺസ്ട്രക്ഷൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന കൺട്രിയെ തിരിച്ച് ഇക്കോണമിയെ ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്ത് കൊണ്ടുവരിക എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്യണം എന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ എന്ത് വേണം? അഗ്രികൾച്ചർ സെക്ടർ വേണം, ഇൻഡസ്ട്രിയൽ സെക്ടർ വേണം, അതുപോലുള്ള സെക്ടേഴ്സിന്റെ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് വേണം. പിന്നെ ഇൻഫ്ലേഷണറി ടെൻഡൻസീസ് കുറയ്ക്കുക, അതുപോലുള്ള ഫുഡ് ക്രൈസിസ് കുറയ്ക്കുക, ഹങ്കർ ക്രൈസിസ് കുറയ്ക്കുക. സോ ദീസ് ആർ ദ ബേസിക് തിങ്സ് വിച്ച് ലീഡ് ടു റീകൺസ്ട്രക്ഷൻ. അപ്പൊ റീകൺസ്ട്രക്ഷൻ ആയിരുന്നു ദ മേജർ ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ് ഓഫ് ദിസ് 5-year പ്ലാൻ. റീകൺസ്ട്രക്ഷൻ with giving importance to the agriculture sector. Okay, so that was the main objective of the first 5-year plan. And then there was this community development program, and നമ്മൾ പറയുന്നുണ്ട് ഗ്രോത്ത് റേറ്റ് വാസ് വെരി ഹൈ. നമുക്ക് 2.1 ഗ്രോത്ത് റേറ്റ് എക്സ്പെക്ട് ചെയ്തിരുന്ന ഒരു സമയത്ത് പോലും we had a growth rate of 3.6%. Okay, so that shows that there was a very high growth rate. പക്ഷേ ഈ ഗ്രോത്ത് റേറ്റ് എത്രത്തോളം സസ്റ്റൈനബിൾ ആയിരുന്നു എന്നുള്ളത് is something to be discussed. Okay, സസ്റ്റൈനബിൾ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഗ്രോത്ത് റേറ്റ് എത്ര കാലം കണ്ടിന്യൂ ചെയ്തു എന്നുള്ളത് വാസ് ആൻ ഇഷ്യൂ. അപ്പം അതുപോലെ one point which I missed out was that there was a revival of small and cottage industries. Okay, ഈ small industries, cottage industries എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഇന്ത്യയെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം are very much importance. Okay, small industries, cottage industries എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ they don't produce the big so called laptops, computers, etc. പക്ഷെ സ്മോൾ ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീസ്, കോട്ടേജ് ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീസ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ വളരെ മൈക്രോ ലെവലിലുള്ള ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീസ് ആണ്. ഈ ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീസിന്റെ ഡെവലപ്മെന്റിൽ ഇന്ത്യ വളരെയധികം ഫോക്കസ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. ആൻഡ് ദാറ്റ് ടു ഇൻ ദി ഫസ്റ്റ് 5-year plan. Okay, so whenever you hear the first 5-year plan, first thing which you have to come into mind is 1951 to 56. You have to take care of the fact that it was reconstruction after the Second World War, and that too with the help of or focusing on the agriculture sector. Okay, ഈ രണ്ട് ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ്സ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇയർ ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ്സ് ഹാരോൾഡ് ഡമാർ മോഡൽ ആണ് ഫോക്കസ് ചെയ്തിരുന്നത്. ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ യു കീപ് ഇറ്റ് ഇൻ മൈൻഡ്. ഓക്കെ, നൗ യു മേ റൈറ്റ് ഡൗൺ ദി സെക്കൻഡ് 5-year plan. Second 5-year plan. Second 5-year plan period is from 1st April 1956. Date എഴുതിയില്ല കുഴപ്പമില്ല. 1956 to 31 March 1961. 1st April 1956 to 31 March 1961. Model, unbalanced growth model of PC Mahalanobis. Model is unbalanced growth model of PC Mahalanobis. Unbalanced growth of PC Mahalanobis. Main objective, rapid industrialization. Other objectives. Faster growth of national income. Other objectives. Other objectives, faster growth of national income. Rapid industrialization with special emphasis on heavy industries. Rapid industrialization with special emphasis on heavy industries. To reduce inequality of income and wealth. To reduce inequality of income and wealth. Equitable distribution. Equitable distribution of the benefits of economic development. Equitable distribution of the benefits of economic development. To increase investment rate. To increase investment rate from 7% to 11%. To increase investment rate from 7% to 11%. Main features. Main features. Shortage of foreign exchange. Main features, shortage of foreign exchange. Problem of inflation and food availability. Problem of inflation and food availability. Construction of steel plants. Problem of inflation and food availability. Construction of steel plants. Construction of steel plants in public sector. In public sector at Bhilai. At Bhilai, BHILA. Bhilai is a place, an industrial sector. Bhilai, Durgapur. Bhilai, Durgapur, and Rourkela. Rourkela, Rourkela, RAURKELA. RAURKELA, Raurkela. Growth rate of per capita income. Growth rate of per capita income was 1.9% per annum. Growth rate of per capita income was 1.9% per annum. And the national income, next point, okay, national income increased at the rate of 4.3%, 4.3% against the target of 4.3% against the target of 4.5%. Okay, so this is the second 5-year plan. So the 5-year plans in annual plan, 5-year plans in the years and continuous. Okay, 5-year plan, so obviously 5 varsham. And if you use logic in that, 1951 to 56, 56 to 61, obviously. So that is the period. Years model first Harrod-Domar model, second something which we have already told, it's the unbalanced growth strategy by PC Mahalanobis. Okay, it is the unbalanced growth model or unbalanced growth strategy. And what is unbalanced growth strategy? Someone please tell what is unbalanced growth strategy or unbalanced growth model, which I even told today, I guess. Exactly. Pala sectors and pala lending. Okay. Different sectors will be considered differently. Balanced growth and all sectors will be investment and simultaneous investment will be equal. Okay. So that is the difference between balanced growth and unbalanced growth. And main objective is absolutely different to that of the first 5-year plan. First 5-year plan is rapid agriculture, rapid development of agriculture sector. Here we are telling about a rapid industrialization. Okay, industrial sector na heavy focus on second 5-year plan. Okay, first 5-year plan India's agricultural stability was okay. Okay, and when the agricultural stability was okay, when farming was done right, the think tank of the planning commission thought, why can't we change it to why can't we now shift our focus from agriculture sector to the industrial sector? And that was the reason why basic and heavy industries were given prime importance in this 5-year plan. Okay, about 56 to 61, keep that in mind. Unbalanced growth strategy, keep that in mind. Rapid industrialization, keep that in mind. Either 5-year plan, even recommendations, I mean, social protection programs, the years, the main objectives, features. These are the things you must have in mind. Okay, if not all the features, at least 2 or 3 points. And main objectives is the first 5-year plan much more of a positive in nature. National income growth achieve the target and achieve it. Faster growth of national income was a major objective of this. But faster growth of national income achieve cheyiditilla. Karna main feature what do we call as the main feature? 5-year plan main feature national income 4.3% compared to the target of 4.5%. Okay, so a main feature objective fail main aim national income growth fast and that objective has failed in this second 5-year plan. Reducing the inequality of wealth, reducing the inequality of income. Common points. One thing which you have to notice is introduction of steel plants, introduction of industries in Pillai, Raurkela. That seems to be a very important point because this 5-year plan focused on what? Rapid industrialization. So obviously, when we talk about rapid industrialization, you must be aware of the industrial plants that are there in India. Okay, the different number of industrial plants that are there in India, all the plants which we have told are the main industrial core of India. Pillai, Raurkela, etc. Durgapur, etc. All these are the main core areas of industrial development or industrial sector in India. So that is remains as a very important point. Okay, and expansion in employment opportunities and all are very common points which we discuss in almost all the 5-year plans. That has been a point or an objective from the first 5-year plan till the last 5-year plan. Even now we strive for expansion of employment opportunities. Okay, so that is regarding the second 5-year plan. You may write now. You may write the third 5-year plan. Third 5-year plan. So what would be the time period? 61 to 66. You can write it down. If you want the exact date, 1st April 1961 to 31 March 1966. Do you know why this 1st April and this 31 March is coming frequently? One financial year. Exactly. So 1st April 1961 to 31 March 1966. Model. Which model did it focus? John Sandy and S. Chakravarti model. John Sandy and S. Chakravarti model. John Sandy and S. Chakravarti model. Main objective, self-reliant and self-sustained economy. Self-reliant and self-sustained economy. Other objectives, self-reliant and self-sustained economy. Other objectives are development of agriculture, development of agriculture, development of agriculture, self-reliance in food grains, self-reliance in food grains, integrated development of agriculture and industrial sector, integrated development of agriculture and industrial sector, to increase employment opportunities, to increase employment opportunities, reduction in inequality of income and wealth, reduction in inequality of income and wealth, to ensure equality of opportunity, to ensure equality of opportunity. Main features, change in development priorities, change in development priorities during the plan, due to two wars, WARs. Due to two wars. Do you know which were the two wars fought by India during those 1960 to 65? Indo-China War in 1962 and Indo-Pak War in 1965. Okay, so those were the two wars. You can note it down. China War and Indo-China War in 62 and 1665. Indo-Pak War. Slowdown in industrial development. Next point, slowdown in industrial development. Failure of monsoon. And drought. Failure of monsoon and drought in many parts of the country. Failure of monsoon and drought in many parts of the country. Only 2% growth. Only 2% growth rate. Only 2% growth rate in food grain production. Increase in inequality. Increase in inequality of income and wealth. Increase in inequality of income and wealth. Growth rate of national income. Growth rate of national income was only 2.7%. Growth rate of national income was only 2.7% against the targeted growth of 5.6%. 2.7% against the targeted growth of 5.6%. Growth rate of per capita income. Growth rate of per capita income was almost negligible. Was almost negligible. From these many features, please tell me whether this plan was successful or not. So this is a failed plan, okay? Comparing the first two 5-year plans, this plan is considered as a failed plan because of the fact that it had certain objectives, increase in food grains, increasing the national income, reduction in inequality, all the things which they have stated as objectives, you can write the just opposite as their feature, okay? National income reduced. There was a very negligible or a slight rise in the food grains and inequality rose. So whatever you write as the objectives, that can be the exact, you can write the features as the almost the exact opposite of the main objectives, okay? Main objectives in the diametrically opposite features in the plan, and that is the reason why we call it as a failed plan. So but still, you have to understand that this was a plan which was set up from 1961 to 66 by John Sandy and S. Chakravarti. And this model basically called for what self-reliant and self-reliant economy, like a self-sustained economy. Okay, that is what they called for. But did they achieve that? No, they did not achieve that for the fact that they had many objectives like increase in food grains, reduction in inequality. Those two are the main objectives. Okay, increase in food grains or becoming self-reliant in producing food grains. Then reduction in inequality. In all those areas, they've been a failure. This model has been, or this 5-year plan has been a failure. And growth rates also. The growth rate of per capita income has almost been negligible or zero. And the national income, the targeted growth rate was around 6%. We achieved only around 2.5%. So this was really a failure model or a failed model as compared to the first 5-year plan and the second 5-year plan. Okay, second 5-year plan, the first 5-year plan was a really successful one. For the fact being, they basically focused on reconstruction. Okay, and ഒരു plan improve ആയാൽ അതിനെ അങ്ങനെ improve ചെയ്ത രീതിയിൽ continue ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ട് പോകാൻ ഭയങ്കര പാടാണ്. And that can be one reason why this third 5-year plan failed. അപ്പം strategies had to be changed in the fourth 5-year plan. Okay, അപ്പോൾ first 5-year planൽ whatever you have analyzed are the main features അല്ലെങ്കിൽ objectives എന്ന് പറയുന്ന objectivesനെ satisfy ചെയ്യുന്ന features ആണ് ആ 5-year plan ഉള്ളത്. സെക്കൻഡ് 5-year പ്ലാനിലോട്ട് വരുമ്പോൾ ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ്സിനെ എല്ലാം സാറ്റിസ്ഫൈ ചെയ്യുന്ന ഫീച്ചേഴ്സ് ഇല്ല. അതായത് ആ പ്ലാനിൽ ചില ലൂപ്പ് ഹോൾസ് ഉണ്ട് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഫെയിലിയർ സിസ്റ്റംസ് ഉണ്ട്. തേർഡ് 5-year പ്ലാനിലോട്ട് വരുമ്പോൾ whatever you write as the objectives, it's the diametrically opposite. The features are the diametrically opposite or somewhat opposite to that of the main features. So you can write this as a failed model. Okay, this is a failed model. And so third 5-year plan was of not, the main objective was really good, but they failed to achieve that. So after these three 5-year plans, came the 3 annual plans. Okay. So now we'll be having 3 annual plans. Annual plan means oro varsha oro plan. So from the period of 1st April 1966 to 31st March 1969 to 31st March 1969. The reason being there are 3 annual plans. 1st April 1966 to 31st March 1969. Okay, there were 3 annual plans set rather than going for a single 5-year plan. What would have been the reason why we introduced 3 annual plans instead of going for another 5-year plan? We had 3 5-year plans in a consecutive session. Why didn't we go for another 5-year plan, and why did we choose 3 annual plans for that reason? What was? Yeah, 5-year plan, third 5-year plan was a failure. And 5-year plan എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ അടുത്തൊരു 5 ഇയറിലേക്കുള്ള ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ്സ് സെറ്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ ഇന്ത്യ വാസ് നോട്ട് കേപ്പബിൾ ഓഫ് സെറ്റിംഗ് ആൻ ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ്, ആൻഡ് ടു അച്ചീവ് ദാറ്റ് ഒബ്ജക്റ്റീവ് വാസ് നോട്ട് practically possible when it comes to Indian situation. Okay, India the political situation, social situation, economic situation, it was unsure about whether it would be able to achieve the objectives of the 4th 5-year plan. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഒരു 4th 5-year plan പോകാണ്ട് ഒരു 3-year annual plan പോയത്. Okay, so they could change the objectives, they could understand what can happen in this 3 years, and then go for a 5-year plan if needed. Okay, so that was the reason why they chose to go for 3 annual plans. You can write down the objectives. Objectives of the 3 annual plans: to overcome the ill effects of 2 wars. To overcome the ill effects of 2 wars. To solve the food crisis or the food problem. To solve the food crisis or the food problem. To control inflation. To solve the food problem, to control inflation. To prepare the base for the 4th plan. To prepare the base for the 4th plan. Main features. Main features: 3 annual plans for 3 years consecutively. 3 annual plans for 3 years consecutively. 3 annual plans for 3 years consecutively. Devaluation of currency. Devaluation of currency in 1966. Devaluation of currency in 1966. Failed to control unemployment and inflation. Failed to control unemployment and inflation. Beginning of Green Revolution in 1966. And mark that, highlight that point, okay? Beginning of Green Revolution in 1966. 1966, 1967 period. 1966, 67. Introduction of buffer stock scheme for food grains. Introduction of buffer stock scheme for food grains. Okay, so as I told you, we had 3 5-year plans till 1966. Third 5-year plan was a total or a complete failure, and so we tried to move to 3 annual plans. To what was one of the major objectives? To set the base for the 4th plan. Okay, to set the base for the 4th 5-year plan was one of the major objectives of the 3 annual plans. അതായത് ഈ 3 ആനുവൽ പ്ലാൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് പിന്നെ annual plan continue ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് ഉണ്ടാക്കിയതല്ല. It was not made for that. But what was the major reason for that? What was the major reason why this annual plan was, three annual plans were put into position? It was to create a fourth 5-year plan. Okay. And for putting that fourth 5-year plan, we required three annual plans to understand what has to be changed, what has to be modified, what things have to be deleted, and what things have to be added. Okay. And the main features are that there were three annual plans, as you all know. Devaluation of currency. What do you mean by devaluation? Exactly. When you compare one currency in terms of the other currency, your currency's value will be lower. Okay. That is what you mean by devaluation of currency. And that happened in 1966. One positive feature which you can take from this plan is the plan which I mean, the point which I told you to highlight, that is the introduction of green revolution in 1966. And that was one point which increased food grains in India, which increased food supply in India. Okay. That's the only positive you can take from this plan. And the introduction of buffer stock scheme is a good point, but not an important point as of how green revolution's point is. Okay. What do you mean by buffer stock? What do you mean by buffer stock? ഒരു സാധനത്തിന്റെ ബഫർ ഉണ്ട്, ബഫർ സ്റ്റോക്ക് ഉണ്ടെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ എന്താ? What do you mean by that? You're keeping certain things aside, okay? കുറച്ച് ഭാഗം എടുത്ത് മാറ്റി വെക്കുകയാണ്. You are saving something. You have an excess of something, okay? സോ ആ ബഫർ സ്റ്റോക്ക് ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്യുക എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ആ എക്സസ് ഉള്ള സാധനത്തിന്, സർപ്ലസ് എമൗണ്ടിന്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഉള്ള ഒരു സാധനം യു ആർ സെറ്റിംഗ് ഇറ്റ് അസൈഡ്, ഓക്കെ, ഫോർ ദ ഫാക്ട് ദാറ്റ് ആ സാധനം മെയിൻറ്റെയിൻ ചെയ്യാൻ പിന്നീട് ഒരു ആവശ്യം വന്നാൽ when there is a need in future you use this buffer stock, okay, അതിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ടാണ് ബഫർ സ്റ്റോക്ക്. So the only positive feature you can take from this main features is that the introduction of green revolution, okay. Other features seem to be again negative. And one of the major objectives which you never must miss out is, why was this three annual plans created? It was to create a fourth 5-year plan. Okay, that is the thing which you have to keep in mind. Now you can write the fourth 5-year plan. So following these three annual plans, we had the fourth 5-year plan. Period from what would be the period of this 5-year plan? 1st April 1969. 69. The annual plans ended in 69, right? It was from 66 to 69. There were three annual plans from 66 to 69. So obviously this will start from 1st April 1969 to 31st March 1974, because this is a 5-year plan. So that this is the period. 51 to 56 was the first 5-year plan. 56 to 61. Now you take 61 to 66. 51 to 56. Okay, first 5-year plan. Second 5-year plan. So automatically it would be 56 to 61, right? 61 to 66. 61 to 66, and we had three annual plans, 67, 68, 69. So the next 5-year plan will come from 69 to 74. Okay, so the fourth 5-year plan, now you know, as you know, the period of the fourth 5-year plan, this model was made by Alan S. A-L-L-E-N, Alan S. Mann, M-A-N-N-E, Alan S. Mann, and Ashok Rudra, R-U-D-R-A. Okay, Alan S. Mann and Ashok Rudra. And the main objective was self-reliance and growth with stability. Self-reliance and growth with stability. In which previous 5-year plan did you see the concept of self-reliance? Third 5-year plan. So the main objective, the major objective of this plan was self-reliance and aiming at economic growth, but with stability. Okay. So you can write down the other objectives. Self-reliance in agriculture and industrial sector. Self-reliance in agriculture and industrial sector. Equitable distribution. equitable distribution, balanced development of all sectors, balanced development of all sectors, balanced development of all sectors, faster growth of national income, faster growth of national income, to increase employment opportunities. Okay, there are a lot of other features which you have to write. But before that, and last point was to increase employment opportunities. Okay. Do you know the reason why this fourth 5-year plan focused on self-reliance and growth with stability as the main objective? Yeah. The third 5-year plan also had self-reliance in mind, right? One of the main objective of the third 5-year plan was also self-reliance. And they did not succeed in that. So the 3 annual plans were brought into reason to clearly bring in this concept of self-reliance in India. Mahatma Gandhi was an ardent advocate of self-reliance, okay? And he, not only he, there were many other who advocated self-reliance in India. And that is the reason why this government has implemented a scheme to implement self-reliance in India. We'll talk about that. But before that, the fourth 5-year plan emphasized on self-reliance due to the fact that the third 5-year plan's major objective was a failure. So they wanted to recreate something in such a way that how can we bring in self-reliance to India? Okay, not only in agriculture and industrial sector as a whole, in a holistic development from a whole point of view, what can be the major ways in which self-reliance can be brought in India? So that was one of the major objectives of the fourth 5-year plan. Now you can write the main features. The main features. Higher rate of inflation. High rate of inflation. Slowdown in new capacity creation. Slowdown in new capacity creation. Labor unrest. Labor unrest. Labor unrest. High unemployment rate. High unemployment. High growth rate of population. High growth rate of population. Oil crisis in 1972-73. Oil crisis in 1972-73. Problem of refugees. Problem of refugees after 1971 war with Pakistan. Problem of refugees after 1971 war with Pakistan. Nationalization of 14 banks in 1969. Underline that point, okay? Nationalization of 14 banks in 14 banks, 14 banks in 1969. Monopolies and restrictive nationalization of 14 banks in 1969. Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act, which is also known as MRTP Act. Which is also known as MRTP Act, was introduced in 1969. MRTP Act 1969. Okay. Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. Growth rate of per capita income was negligible. growth rate of per capita income was negligible. Growth rate of per capita income was negligible. Growth rate of national income. Growth rate of national income was 3.2%. Was 3.2% against the target of 5.7%. Against the target of 5.7%. Suboptimal utilization. Suboptimal utilization. Suboptimal utilization of capacities in the industrial sector. Suboptimal utilization of capacities in the industrial sector. Okay, so you read the fourth 5-year plan. You just go through the fourth 5-year plan which we have written down. Okay, so analyzing the main features, what do you think? How was this plan? Was this plan effective? No. Again, the fourth 5-year plan was also a failure. Even after having 3 annual plans to decide on what can be the best fourth 5-year plan, this fourth 5-year plan has also not been effective. Not only effective in the sense, it has lessened the growth rate of many things. Okay, national income growth rate was low, per capita income was negligible in the previous plans also. But what has to be analyzed is that the capital accumulation has gone down, the industries have gone down, there has been a high unemployment rate, there has been a high growth rate of population. So all those factors that affect our country negatively are there in the fourth 5-year plan of this country. Okay, the fourth 5-year plan of the Planning Commission has never worked, even with taking a good model. Which model have you taken in the fourth 5-year plan? Alan F. Mann and Ashok Rudra, right? So when was this plan introduced? 69 to 74 is the period, right? Okay. So what we have to analyze in the fourth 5-year plan is there have been certain set objectives which every plan has. But again, in the fourth 5-year plan, as in the third 5-year plan, this plan also seems to be a failure due to the fact that there has been a high unemployment rate, high rate of population growth, high inflation. Everything that has to go right has gone wrong in this plan. Okay. Even the national income rate, the per capita income, and labor unrest for that reason. So many points where things have gone negative. Okay. So this fourth 5-year plan is an area which has created a lot of issues. And number third 5-year plan, we talked about one thing that was regarding the wars. Okay. Two war Indo-China war and Indo-Pak war. Here, we did not have any wars as such, but refugee crisis. And one thing which was there is the oil crisis. Okay. Oil crisis was a very big issue which affected India. And refugee crisis again was a very big issue because of the inundation of the refugees from Pakistan. India found it a lot difficult to cope with the existing population rate. Okay. About the refugees in the inflow, oil crisis, oil crisis affected the economic side of it. Refugees also affected the economic side of it, but it also affected the social strata of the population. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ social status of the country, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ ഒരു political social structure of the country എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് was influenced അല്ലെങ്കിൽ affected എന്ന് പറയാം. Okay, so that can be 2 major causes. Okay, നിങ്ങളോട് 2 major causes ചോദിക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ why the fourth 5-year plan was a failure, you can clearly state that oil crisis of 1972 or 73 period, and this 1971 war with Pakistan, the coming back of the refugees or taking back the problem of refugees was also a major cause of the fourth 5-year plan being a failure. Okay, so E 5-year plan successful alarm. It was clearly a failure. If someone asks you to write the reasons behind the failure, you must be clearly able to point out what are the reasons, that is the oil crisis and the refugee crisis. Okay, that being the reasons, there are several other failed features like a high unemployment rate, labor unrest, etc., etc. And one point which you can write is irregular monsoon. Okay, irregular monsoon was also a main feature of this plan. Irregular monsoon. So economically, socially, politically, it has affected, this plan has deeply affected the Indian economy. Okay, it is not from only an economic perspective, even from a political and a social perspective, this plan has been a failure. Okay, so what is the main reason behind the failure? What are the main causes? Oil crisis and war, the problem of refugees due to a war with the Pakistan. And what was the reason for the failure of the third 5-year plan? Indo-Pak as well as the Indo-China war, right? 1962 and 1965. So basically, in a 5-year plan, or in any plan you take, if any kind of wars or crisis like oil crisis, food crisis, these type of things occur, automatically it generates or creates a type of unrest in the country, political, social, and economic. Okay. ഒരു ജനറൽ ആയിട്ട് ഒരു വാർ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ റെഫ്യൂജി ക്രൈസിസ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ഫുഡ് ക്രൈസിസ് ഒരു കൺട്രിയിൽ ഉണ്ടായി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ആ പ്ലാൻ ഓൾമോസ്റ്റ് ഫെയിലിയർ ആണെന്ന് പറയാൻ പറ്റും. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു പ്ലാൻ എത്ര നല്ല പ്ലാൻ ആണെങ്കിലും അതിന്റെ പ്ലാനിങ് പ്രോപ്പർ ആവില്ല. ഒരു വാർ ഉണ്ടാകുമ്പോൾ ഒബ്വിയസ്ലി പൊളിറ്റിക്കൽ, സോഷ്യൽ, എക്കണോമിക് അൺട്രസ്റ്റ് ആ കൺട്രിയിൽ ഉണ്ടാവും, ഫൈനാൻഷ്യൽ എമർജൻസി ഉണ്ടാവും, ബ്രേക്ക് ഡൗൺ ഓഫ് കോൺസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷണൽ മെഷീനറി ഉണ്ടാക്കാം, നാഷണൽ എമർജൻസി ഡിക്ലെയർ ചെയ്തേക്കാം. There are a lot of issues and there are a different number of articles. Politically speaking, there are a different number of articles which come into act, right? National emergency, which article comes under which article? 352. Breakdown of constitutional machinery comes under 356, and 360 is financial emergency. So these are the articles which comes. I mean, what I was telling is, when wars or such kind of oil crisis, food crisis occurs, it not only creates an economic unrest or an economic dilemma in the country, but it also creates a social unrest as well as a political turmoil in the country. Okay. So that being the failure of the fourth 5-year plan, we'll analyze what the fifth 5-year plan. Okay, is okay. So you can write down the fifth 5-year plan. Fifth 5-year plan. So you only tell me the period of this plan. First April 1974 to 31st March 1979. Model is Planning Commission. Okay, Planning Commission. Model is taken from the Planning Commission. Main objectives or main objective, self-reliance and poverty eradication. Poverty eradication. Other objectives: to increase employment opportunities, special emphasis on agriculture and basic industries, special emphasis on agriculture and basic industries, emphasis on production of consumer goods, special emphasis on agriculture and basic industries, emphasis on production of consumer goods. Emphasis on production of consumer goods. Storage of food grains. Storage of food grains and expansion of PDS. What is PDS? Public distribution system. Storage of food grains and expansion of PDS, public distribution system. Next point is policy of import substitution. Policy of import substitution and export promotion. Please mark that point, okay? Please highlight that point. Policy of import substitution and export promotion. To reduce economic, social and regional inequality. To reduce economic, social and regional inequality. To reduce economic, social and regional inequality. Main features. Main features. The plan was declared. The plan was declared. Closed. The plan was declared closed. CLOCD closed. 1 year. 1 year before the schedule. 1 year before the schedule. But later on. But later on, the decision was reversed. But later on, the decision was reversed by the Congress government. By the Congress government. No improvement in unemployment situation. Second point. No improvement in unemployment situation. No improvement in unemployment situation. Reduced targets. Reduced targets for growth rate of national income. Reduced targets for growth rate of national income as well as different sectors. Next point. Growth rate of national income. Growth rate of national income was 4.8%. 4.8% against the target of 4.4%. Growth rate of national income was 4.8% against the target of 4.4%. The last point is growth rate of per capita income was 3.1%. Growth rate of per capita income was 3.1%. Okay. Now we just read the fifth 5-year plan. Just go through the fifth 5-year plan. Okay, so this plan also has the same, somewhat of the same objectives as of what the other plans have. But one thing is entirely different from the other 4 5-year plans which you have studied. That is bringing in the concept of import substitution and the concept of export promotion, right? When is a country said to be self-reliant is when the country is able to produce goods on its own, okay, without depending on an external source. When a country is able to produce goods on its own, that country becomes self-reliant, okay. If you ask me whether it's 100% practical in the sense, no, it's not 100% practical. Definitely, there will be countries, depending on one country, you take any of the developed countries in this world, at least they will be depending on some other country for certain products, okay? If not for all the products, at least for certain products. That dependency ratio would be there. But keeping that in mind, what can be the best way, what can be the best production unit that a country can have in its own country, okay? Within the domestic territory of that country, what can be the best production unit it can bring for producing a particular product that would make a country self-reliant. Self-reliant, what do you mean by self-reliant? Yeah, so Swayam Paryaptada, which means you are able to produce goods, you are able to produce something in your own country, in the domestic territory of your own country, without seeking the help or without depending on some other country. Okay. So our self-reliance in the concept, self-reliance in the concept is somewhat incorporated in the 5th 5-year plan. But if you ask me whether this plan has been a success, no. This 5-year plan has not been that successful. Idina follow the annual plans. So this 5-year plan has not been successful, but the positive feature, one positive feature which you can take from this plan is that there has been an import substitution policy as well as an export promotion policy. And the national income in the growth rate of national income, we have written that it was 4.8% as to the target of 4.4%. Revised target another. Okay, the target could have been a 5.5% or 6% for that reason, because India independence for the, if we check, it's almost 30 years. 1917 or 30 years in a time under 1970, 77. So our 30 years we revised the target to a lower target. Okay, 4.5 and achieve we took that target. Okay, 4.4 or 4.5 for that reason. So what can be the positive takeout or what can be the positive out from this 5-year plan is that the international trade concept has been brought into consideration. You can take that point. International trade, export promotion, import substitution, it brings in the concept of international trade. So brings in the concept of international trade. You can just write it down as a point. That's it. Brings in the concept of international trade. Brings in the concept of international trade through export promotion and that import substitution point. Okay. Other than that, if we look, self-reliance and poverty eradication still remained as an issue even after this 5-year plan. Okay. So following this, we had several annual plans which we will discuss in the coming classes. Okay. So that's it for today. Thank you. So tomorrow you'll have a class on inflation.